What's up YouTube, Zazubaar here. If you saw my last video, you'll remember that my friend said when I flipped out I was attempting to do a review of an obscure monster movie called Reptilian. Now before I get on with the review, I just want to apologize for any heart attacks or seizures I might have caused. But it's an automatic reaction whenever this movie is brought up. But I've had a day to relax after my little incident, and now I'm ready to really express my feelings for this film. But in advance to any hate mail from fans of the Angry Video Game Nerd and the Nostalgia Critic, I am not trying to rip those two guys off, and let me just say I really enjoy their videos. So this is it, my review of Reptilian. So how many of you guys have ever heard of a South Korean kaiju by the name of Young-Guri? That's what I thought. No one! This is probably the most obscure monster to ever come out of the East. I never heard it mentioned in a conversation about monsters, and I've never seen anyone review it. Well, I'm about to give it the mention it doesn't deserve, a review. But before I do that, let me tell you a little bit about the monster. And yes, the creature's actual name is Young-Guri. In all my research on this film, I've never found out why. Maybe there's an old Gary out there too. So anyway, shockingly, Reptilian is actually a remake of a 1967, I guess you could call it a cult classic, film entitled Young-Guri, Monster of the Deep. And no, that doesn't shockingly mean the ocean. Unlike Godzilla and Gamera, Young-Guri comes from underground in the original film. This film was actually pretty successful in South Korea, but not when it came to the US. Now, as for Young-Guri himself, in the original he kinda looks like Gorosaurus with a horn on his nose and a lot more fake. But you won't believe what his energy attack is. He breathes fire. Wow! But he also shoots a laser from his horn. Cool. Now, I only saw this movie when I found out Reptilian was actually a remake of it, and I found it in its entirety on Google Video and watched it. And guess what? From what I remember, it was really, really bad. You know how Gamera was a cheaper version of Godzilla? Well, this is actually like a cheap version of Gamera. Now that's pretty cheap. Now, more than 30 years later, director Shim Hyung Rae remade this film and simply called it Young-Guri when it was released in South Korea. Now, he had planned this film to be the one that would make his career and the monster famous icons. Yes, people, he intended this thing to become just as, or even more popular than Godzilla. He made this movie with an entire American cast, except for some pilots who were Korean. He did this to give the film a larger market. But it only made it less of a success in South Korea, and the bad acting made it a low grosser when it was surprisingly released in the US. However, when it was released in the US, it was retitled Reptilian, and gave it a text font which is identical to the font used for Godzilla in 1998. The film was also released the same year as Godzilla 2000, and only 1 year after Roland Emmerich's Godzilla. The reasons why it was basically a flop only become more and more apparent. Now that I got all that background information out of the way about this movie, let's move on to the review itself. The plot is nothing like the original 1967 film, and it's pretty frickin' stupid. It opens with some sort of scientific expedition in a cave with dinosaur fossils and hieroglyphics all over the walls. But for some reason, none of them seem interested in that. They're after what looks like the light from Godzilla vs. Megalon before it explodes and turns into Megalon. And guess what happens when one of the dumbasses tries to dig whatever the hell it is out? It explodes! All their diggers are vaporized in the explosion, which happened for some reason, except for one scientist, who likes to laugh maniacally after he loses like 7 guys. But the real reason he's laughing is that there's a wall of hieroglyphics behind the exploding one. So what was the point of the explosion? Did the guys who made the hieroglyphs just have some spare explosives, so they just put it in front of the wall? Whatever. But also in the cave was another scientist with a really bad lazy eye, who got lost, I guess, and he finds some sort of alien body. Then the movie starts to get really weird, and first we have the guy who liked to laugh a lot running some sort of excavation. He's apparently digging up the largest dinosaur fossil ever. Well, someone's overcompensating for something. He hires a photographer who acts like he looks, small and hairy, to take pictures of the find once it's dug up. Then in what seems like another movie, we have some sort of military dude alerting the government that we're being invaded by aliens. What's funny is that everyone just accepts it, and they all immediately identify the craft as an alien ship. This guy knew to just cut all the skeptic bullcrap and just establish that the aliens are here and they're hostile. Apparently, according to some ancient prophecy told to us by Dr. Creepy McScary Eyes, the aliens are here to resurrect the dinosaur that the guys who like to laugh a lot is digging up. Well, those aliens really must be patient, so they just waited millions of years for the scientists to dig up the dinosaur so they could just resurrect it to destroy the Earth. Now, before we move on, let me just say that these aliens are really not that bad looking. Their ship is, but the aliens are always shrouded in darkness and they have very little screen time. This movie saves itself from having bad-looking aliens. But the monster, on the other hand, young Gary, looks horrible. On the cover, he doesn't look too bad. He looks pretty cool, actually. He actually kind of looks like a rubber suit. But in the movie, he looks totally different from the cover. The CG is so bad that the coolness of the design is overshadowed by the CG looking like what it should before the final cut was done. Also, young Gary looks practically nothing like he did in the original film. In this one, he's darker colored, has 3 horns, a shorter snout, and doesn't shoot lasers. Damn it! As I mentioned, he's under the aliens' control. But not only that, he also gets teleported from set to set. I guess he's too fancy for going underground or swimming to the city. From here on out, there's no plot. It's all just crappy action scenes and bad destruction scenes that are so bad they're laughable. The military tries everything to kill it, but surprise, surprise, nothing works. Probably the funniest thing they try is they use some sort of advanced jetpack thingy with some machine laser guns to try and kill young Gary. Again, the CG is what kills it. It looks laughable at best whenever military vehicles or the monster is on screen. Now, at this point in the movie, a line is spoken that is the reason why every copy of this movie should be found and destroyed. At one point, the lead military character says the following lines, and I quote, "Compared to this guy, Godzilla is a pussy." Oh, that just tears it. This movie just went from blatant ripoff to full-scale shout-out. So not only does this movie try to copy to the success of the Godzilla movies, it's trying to slam the King of the Monsters himself. But all I have to say, Shim Hyung Rae, is fuck you. So past that little moment, the movie takes another turn. Apparently the aliens are controlling young Gary via some sort of device in his forehead called the Daemon. Daemon. Ah. But actually it's shaped like a diamond, so however the writer came up with that name, it just sounds weird. Well, it doesn't work that well because one of the jetpack commandos does a kamikaze dive into the device, which relieves young Gary from the aliens' control, and thus somehow putting him on the human side. But the aliens only laugh at this because they had another monster called Psychor up their asses the whole time. The new monster comes down and the two have the worst monster battle ever. But also, I also want to ask, why didn't the aliens just use Psychor to attack Earth in the first place? Why go through the trouble of waiting for young Gary to be dug up, go through the trouble of resurrecting him, and then wait for him to destroy every city on the planet? Whatever. I just want to get this review over with. Now quickly, let me talk about Psychor. He looks like a cross between a lobster, an elephant, a scorpion, and young Gary himself. Now, one thing I forgot to mention about young Gary is that he spits fireballs. Again, very original, and he only used it a couple of times until this horrible fight. Again, it's the CG that kills this fight, and at one point you can actually see the blue screen that young Gary's standing on. It's probably no surprise that young Gary wins and the Earthlings live happily ever after. But the aliens have some last words to the Earthlings before departing because they were like totally defeated. They say that they'll be back and they must leave before young Gary discovers his true strength. So I guess they were hinting at a sequel that hasn't happened yet. It's been reported that there's still some secret talks of a sequel, but hopefully that's just a rumor. So that's Reptilian. It's undeniably one of the worst monster movies I've ever seen. It's stupid, the CG sucks, the acting sucks, the monsters are lame, and there's too many plot holes to count. I only recommend it to fellow monster movie fans to laugh at and remember why Godzilla and Gamera are prime examples of good monster movies. However, unless you're looking for something to make satirical commentary over, stay the hell away from Reptilian. Well, that's all I have to say about this piece of crap. Zazubaar out.